Today we'll be talking about JavaScript arrays and objects. Let me just see if I can export this file as a PowerPoint. Okay, maybe I'll do this later. Okay, so JavaScript arrays and objects. So in JavaScript, we will declare array just like the same in all other programming languages using the square brackets. So, for example, this right here is array called Stooges, which contains 3 names in it: Larry, Moe, and Champ. Those are strings, so this is an array of strings, and the way we know that they're strings is because they are enclosed in the quotation marks. So these things right here are strings. So this is an array of variable characters, and that's why you see this variable in over here as the data type. So this array, the way it is declared here, it has 3 entries. We can reference each one of those by saying Stooges curly bracket, give me the first one, the second one, or the third one. So you can put 1, 2, or 3 in here. In this case, we put number 2. And if we do this, then we're going to overwrite the second entry into the array. So the second index number 2 of this array will become equal to curly. The array is a data structure that comes with JavaScript. Again, to declare the array, we need to give the data type first, give a name of the array, and then within the curly brackets we can tell what we would like to have inside of the array or how many elements of this array we want to have, and then we enter finish the line of code with the colon at the end. After the array is declared and filled with elements, we can reference the elements by using the index for that particular element, such as what we have here, 1, 2, or 3. So what features are there in the array for JavaScript? We need to define the data type, but the array can store elements of multiple data types. He can have integers, Boolean variables like true and false, or strings. If the array is made up of numbers or binary values, it can be converted to strings. So the array can have multiple data types, and any of those can be converted to string or text by using the function called toString. we can see what is just a second here. We can see here what is contained within the array by printing it. Array length. So we earlier had an array that had 3 elements. When we create the array, we have to specify the number of elements we want to have in the array. There is a function within JavaScript that we can call if we didn't know how many elements the array has. It's going to obtain this information for us. So if 8 is the array and we say array.length, it will tell us the number of elements in this array. So in this case, there are 3. We can use the function to modify the length of the array. So if we wanted to make it bigger or smaller, we can tell how many elements we want. So a.length equals to, for example, 2. It was earlier equal to 3, and now we want to say it becomes equal to 2. If that's the case, it will truncate the array to the new size that we would like to have. And on the other hand, if we want to have a bigger array than what it currently is, it's going to add more entries to the array, but the new elements, they do not exist. We didn't define them yet, so that's why they will be undefined. The number of elements in the array need to be specified before we create the arrays. That is, in order to create an array, we need to know how many elements it contains. And also, what is the data type of these elements? That is why the size of the array is very specific. We know the number of elements, we know how big is each element, and so there is no such issues as out of bound error, for example. Because of that, we can determine the data type of the array or the elements by using the type of function, and we can determine the length of the array by using array.length. Like I said, if we were to change the size of the array by using this length function, any new elements that are added would be undefined because we just created space for them. We didn't yet specify what their value is. There are a couple of more functions in JavaScript arrays. We can use the concatenate function. That is, if there are strings in the array, it will concatenate them. That is, it adds them together. It will append the second one to the end of the first one. We can get index of specific element within the array by using .indexOf and then tell which element we would like to get the index of. We can add elements together by using the join function, and it creates one string out of the two elements. The pop function would remove and return the last element of the array. We can add more elements to the end of the array by using the push function and specify what exactly we want to append to the end of the array. We can print out the array elements in the order that they're listed, or we can use the reverse function to print them in the opposite order, that is, the last one in this descending order, the last one and then the last one goes first. Shift function would return the first element and then remove it. We can cut the array into pieces by using the slice function. Then we have to tell what slice do we want, starting at element 2, 3, 4, for example, until 7 or until 10. So we want to say where we want to start and where we end, and it will return a subarray. It will return a subarray. We can sort the array. So if the let's say we have integers like 5, 10, 7, 12. If we want to print them in order, the smallest one, the next biggest, and the biggest one at the end, we can use the sorting function. Sort can also compare two numbers for us, since the sort has to compare them anyway. In order to sort them, it provides us the option to compare two elements as well. Any integers, booleans, or other data types, whatever the array contains, can be converted to strings using the toString function. We have seen the shift function that removed the first element. We can undo this by using unshift, and then we will insert an element in the beginning of the array. So let's look at an example of using some of the methods that we just explained. There's an array here called A. It contains two elements, both of them are strings. The first one Steph and the second one J. If we push an element onto the array, let's say we want to push this element Bob, then Bob will be placed in the end that is after the other elements. If we shift an element, he will pop the first element and remove it from the array. If we unshift, we'll do the opposite. It will insert a new element in the beginning of the array. So if we say a.unshift Kelly, then Kelly goes in first in the beginning of the array. The pop function is going to remove the last element. So if we say array.pop, this J is going to disappear from the array. So what will be left is Kelly and Steph. And in the next line of code we say shift. He will pop the first, it will remove the first element this time. So then Kelly disappears from here. And now we have Steph and J, and if we do sorting, he will sort them in alphabetical order. So J will go in front of Steph because J letter is in front of S letter into the alphabet. If they were numbers, we will sort them smallest one first and next biggest one and next biggest one. So the array can serve as many data structures, for example, stack, queue, and a list. The methods that the array contains that we just discussed allow for functionalities of this kind of data structures. List, stack, and queue, because the stack is adding elements onto the top of the stack and is popping elements off the top of the stack. The queue is adding them in the beginning of the structure and popping them off the end of the structure. And so the methods we have just seen allow us to implement this kind of other data structures as well. The split function will break a string into an array using delimiter. So we have to specify what do we want to have in between the two strings that we are creating. So that's called a delimiter. It can be a comma, a space, a tab, something like that. So if we have array S and we say split by placing a space in between the two elements, then he will split the array by placing spaces in between and create one big string. We can reverse the items into the array. That is, we're going to flip the order. Join is similar to the split. Again, we have to tell the delimiter with which we want to join the strings. So before we were splitting them, now we're joining them, and we have to tell what do you want to put in between them. Once you join them, you can put a space, a comma, or something else, a star. In this case, we put an exclamation mark in between the items that we're joining. So far, we have been looking at an array which was one-dimensional, so to speak. It looked like a list, right? It's an array that contained these items Steph and J. So the array, we referenced those items by using one number for the index. That is, the array stooges, we say give me element at index number 2, or set this element at index number 2 to be equal to curly. This is like a list of items. It's a one-dimensional array. We could have two-dimensional arrays or multi-dimensional arrays where, if that was the case, we would need to specify here two indexes, let's say I and J. One will be the rows, the other one the columns. If it looked like a table or like a matrix, the array, then we would use two indexes and say row number 1, column number 2, for example. Set that element of the array. So that will be for multi-dimensional arrays, like the one you see here. Looks like a table or like a matrix, right? So if we are to reference an element within an array that looks like matrix, we have to use two indexes, all right? So if we want to get element 2, 1, this is in element that is so each of those elements would be referenced by the row that they're at and by the column that they're at. So we would have to specify that two indexes in order to access an element within a matrix, array matrix looking like this. If we want to go through all of the elements, we could use a loop, a for loop. And then say what do we want to do at each element that the loop is going through. So for example, there is a for loop here. For each element that is, for example, bigger than 2 or equal to 3 or equal to Louis, then do this specific statement of what we want to do. Or you can use a for each loop that it'll go through each element no matter what they are, and then do something with them. For example, we can print them all. Go through the array and print all the elements. There are a few exercises here. A couple of more things we can do with the array. We can create a sum function that will add all the values into the array. We can search through the array if it was an array of strings and find the longest string, for example, within the array. We can shift the elements, as we have seen with the shift function. Remove the first element and shift them to the right, for example. We can unshift them, that is, shift them to the left. This would be equal to rotate the elements to the right or to the left. So it's going to slide each element to the right by the index that we specify. As we mentioned, the JavaScript itself only has an array as a data structure that is available, but with all the methods that we have discussed for this array, it easily can implement other data structures such as stack, queue, and list. For the stack looks like this. It's like stack of plates or stack of pancakes. We would be placing the next pancake on top of the first one, or as many as we have, they're just placed on top of each other. And then when we want to eat a pancake, we will take the one that's on the top. So we are pushing elements that go to the bottom, and then we pop them off the top. Easily we can do this with the array functions we have discussed so far, such as push and pop functions. We can also tell how many pancakes we have in the stack, in this stack, yes. By using the length function. The queue, on the other hand, would add elements from one side and remove them from the other. So in order to do this, we can use the push and the shift function. So every time a new element is added, they shift. And then we'll be removing them off the beginning instead of off the end, as we did with the stack. The list is a little bit more complex structure, the what you see over here, the blue one. We can have a list of items, whether those are strings or integers or booleans or a data structure of itself of some sort. We can have a list of those items, and we can add them to the beginning, to the end, or to the middle, and we can remove them also from beginning, end, or middle. So the list is, in this sense, a little bit more advanced than the stack and the queue. So for that one, we would use push and pop, and also the unshift function. Like we said, we can go through with a loop through all of the elements of the array and perform a certain function on those elements. One such example of what we have seen is to just print them, right? If we want to go through the entire array and print the elements of the array, we would have to use the for loop. There could be other things we could do as we go through the elements. We can filter them. If, for example, they contain true or false values that we're searching for something in specific, we can filter them. We can map them. We're going to apply a function of some sort to each element and return a new array. We can reduce, that is, gonna combine the results from the mapping function by using the reduce function. So let's say pairs of values and combines them into a single value. Let's look at objects. objects can be anything really. They can be numbers, strings, booleans. In JavaScript, they can be null or undefined, or they can be entire data structure of themselves. Object can be a stack or queue or an array. So the objects would have certain properties. And functions can be applied to them. In JavaScript, we do not have the concept of classes. So every object is just an object, and there are no classes like we would in the regular Java programming languages. So we can create an object by using the variable data type and then tell the name of the object. We can set the object to be equal to something, or it can be empty, like this one right here. If the object has some methods that are defined for that object, we would use the object name dot and then the method. For example, the object is a teacher. Give me the age of the teacher, or the address of the teacher, or the phone number of the teacher. So it would have certain properties. If it was a student or teacher or a customer, it would have a name, an address, age, and so on. To access those properties, we would use the object and then dot this particular property that we are interested in. So that is all what we have today for JavaScript arrays and objects.